reason why we gather in this setting, inside a mosque or a masjid, or the house of Imam al-Hussein, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, is to remember these figures. Tonight we mourn the martyrdom of Imam al-Jawad, alayhi salatu wa salam. And may peace be upon him and his forefathers and his grandmother Fatima Zahra, salamullahi alayha. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give peace to the heart of the Imam. And a lot of people ask a very sincere question: why should we come and remember people from history? What relevance do they have? When we go to school, we learn about the history of Australia, the history of the British imperialist state, and how far they spread in the Commonwealth and how far it spread. But if you ask a person, how does this affect you today? Do you reflect on these important aspects of history? They say, La ya habib, I go to work, I make my money, I come home. Why do I want to think about the imperialist state of the British and how they ruled various parts of the world and still do so to this day? But for us, we find every single istishhad, every martyrdom, and every anniversary and birthday, we want to gather. The reason why I mention this, not to bore you too quickly, is that let's first build a lecture around why we're here, so we set our intention. When the intention is there, you'll find you'll benefit more from the action, which is to sit and to listen, and for myself to speak. Inshallah, I also practice what I preach. First and foremost, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. What relevance does he have today? He's the 9th Imam, after 8 beautiful Imams who were all selected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after the ba'tha of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi and his istishhadas or his martyrdom. Because there is still one Imam in waiting. And our great scholars focus so much on Imam Zaman, Imam Zaman, Imam Zaman. Every lecture you find, they're talking about the 12th Imam and his coming. And they say he's so close. I won't mention certain names on the member for the sake of myself and how I work in this country. But even one of our scholars said, I have hope in praying in Al-Quds. And he's grey in the beard. Many of our grand ulama are hopeful. They're saying the signs are there. Look at Sham, look at Yemen, look at the one who's risen in Khurasan. Think about it. It's happening. We have not seen these signs ever in history all come together in one period. We are in the most unsure times of our century, of our existence as humans in recorded history. Think about this. 10,000 years of recorded human history. The level of immorality, broken families, and relationships which are outside of what we understand to be an old school marriage, a traditional marriage. All of these things were mentioned by the prophets and the Imams, alayhi salatu wasalam. And for the past 100 years, this whole absolute freedom sort of mentality in society, where society says whatever you want to express, do it. This is experimental, this is new. This is new even for the West. 60 years ago, if men or women dressed immodestly, it was frowned upon. Even men at the beach removing their shirts, it was frowned upon. Now it's become easy. This is the first time that you can open up a device and be exposed to things that not even the mind can imagine. And it follows you wherever you go. The only thing separating you and accessing that information is your own free will. This is the first time. The reason why we come to commemorate the Imams, they say come cry for the Imams. Cry for their suffering. Reinvigorate your heart. You see, when you remember someone that's passed away in your family, you remember the good things. We forget the bad most of the time. We remember the good things, what they did for us. And we cry that we couldn't spend an extra day. You know, when they ask, why do we cry for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? It's simple. We could have maybe had an extra day. Or perhaps he didn't have to go like that. His martyrdom, he was one of the leaders of the youth of Jannah, irrespective of Karbala. Irrespective. He was there, he was at the maqam. They say Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein, there's no difference in their maqam. But Abu Abdullah suffers. He suffers for our sake. so that you may remember when the heart is soft and you cry, whatever you feed that heart after the tears stays. Whatever you feed. You know, if someone's lost a family member, they don't forget a second of that funeral. Has anyone here ever lost a person in the family? I want to remind you, do you forget those days? Do you forget a minute of those funerals? This is the power of tears. One of our grand ulama, he says, they tease us, followers of Ahlul Bayt ﷺ, because we cry, but with these tears, we change the nation. If you know who I'm referring to. It's very important that you realize the importance of tears, but also now this is the important part, the connection with the Imam. You see, whenever Imams came about, and we're about to go into the story of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, you're going to notice something very similar to our condition, and tonight we're going to go through exactly what you need to avoid, so when our Imam comes, you don't follow the same mistakes, not just of the Muslims of the time, the Shia of the time. And yes, the Shia back then, they made mistakes, big ones. So in that respect, please, for the honor of Imam al-Jawad, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam al-Jawad on April the 8th of 811 AD in Hijaz, modern day Saudi Arabia, in Medina. His mother was the descendant of one of the wives of the Prophet of African descent. So the Imam already was born with a darker complexion. And in the time of the Prophet and the Imams, one of the things that crept back in after the wafat of Rasulullah, his martyrdom, his istishhad, was racism. I'm just focus on a few points. The Imam was an Imam at the age of 8. And he was an Imam for 23 years, and he was martyred after 23 years. During his Imamah, he was under the caliphate of two caliphs, namely al-Abbasi and al-Ma'mun. Now, the Imam, he encountered a few challenges. First things first. We know Imam Ali ibn Musa Rada, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Anyone who's been on the ziyarah of Imam Rada alayhi salam, he's the gharib of Tus. He's a mystical Imam. When you enter the maqam of the Imam, what takes you into there and takes you out, time lapses, you don't even feel, you don't notice. All you feel is the presence of the Imam. We feel this without seeing the Imam physically. In the time of Imam Rada alayhi salam, he said, when he was asked by one of his ashab, who is the Imam after you? We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appoints the Prophet appoints the first Imam, and every Imam after that, they appoint the next Imam, so humankind can be guided, so they understand right from wrong. Humans need guidance. From when we were born, we need guidance. All of us, we say, like in Arabic, as a general rule, we need guidance. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sends people from day one, they are guided. The ayah I recited were the words of Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam. He says, قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. When they were accusing Sayyidina Maryam salamullah alayha of being indecent and having a child without a father. He says, verily I'm the servant of Allah. The prophets, the humility of prophets, they always introduce themselves as Abdullah and then Rasulullah. وَأَشْهَدَ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. He says, قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني. He gave me the book وجعلني. He made me a prophet. He's saying this from the cradle. He's saying this from the cradle. One of the miracles of Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam. And he says, جعل مباركا أينما كنت. And I am blessed wherever I go. وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا. He's made incumbent upon me prayer and charity so long as I live. Now this miraculous thing, what actually stopped the Israelites of the time from killing her. Now the adulteress in those days was stoned to death. It was a very brutal punishment. However, this miraculous thing happens, and he says, Atani al-kitab, he gave me the book. So it shows already that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He wants to guide, He can guide from a very young age. Imam Rida alayhi salam, to answer the question, how can the Imam, when at the age of 3 he said he is the next Imam, and at the age of 8 Imam Rida alayhi salam was martyred, and Imam Jawad becomes the Imam. Imam Rida alayhi salam, he says to his companion, I made him an Imam and he was 8 years old. And he referred to this hadith, rather this ayah from the Quran. And he also refers to the Prophet John or Yahya alayhi salam, that Allah says we gave him an authority as a sabiyya or sabi. Sabi in Arabic is referring to someone who's not a tifl anymore, it's not a toddler. So as a young boy we gave him authority. So already we're starting to build this up. The Imam was born of darker complexion and he's Imam at a young age. 2 discriminations happen. The Imam becomes the Imam at the age of 8. Some of the Shia leave the Imam for his uncle, and they believe his uncle Abdullah is worthy of authority because he's just a child. Other parts of the Shia, they joined a group called the Waqifiyya, who believe Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam is in his own ghaibah and he returns on the Day of Judgment. Very small amounts. The majority of the Shia, however, they followed the Imam because of the genius of his science. And he was known, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, as being a champion of the sciences. And in fact, in the time of the caliphs he was under, constantly the caliphs would want to challenge the Imam, and he'd sit him with scholars from different faiths and of course from inside our religion, and on many occasions he would challenge them. In one occasion, there was a judge who found someone was stealing, and in Islam they say, under a lot of conditions, that the thief has to pick a lock, to get to that thing that he steals, and the repeat offenders, and all sorts of conditions come up. It's the removal of a hand. Okay. So they take this to a young Imam. And the Imam says, wait, hold on a second. You're going to cut him from the elbow down. The Caliph says, well, what is your view on this? He says, have you not read the ayah of the Quran that the places of prostration for Allah? He says, yes. He says the places of prostration for the human being are the hands, the forehead, the knees and the feet. So you are to remove only you have to leave the palm and remove only a finger for this person's particular thing. And this punishment, before we get into, gosh, that's a bit harsh, these are for people that steal for the sake of stealing. They steal not because they're poor. The poor person in Islam, in an Islamic sort of government, is always pardoned because it's on the government to support the poor. These are for people like fraudsters that steal. It's like white collar crime. They get through locks and they steal constantly from the hard earnings of the people and they don't care. But either way, it doesn't prevent a person from prayer. So of course these things are enacted, of course not for anyone to take it the wrong way in Australia, but they are enacted in a country that elects to have Islam as their law. The important thing is, this young Imam corrects one of the greatest judges of that time, and of course that's where the hatred started to grow within the person. You see, a lot of people, they attain a position in religion, and they might attain this, and I ask Allah to keep us and all of us away from this state of being, where we become religious only to be seen, or to have influence, or have status. Whereas the Imam is very simple. I was asked a religious question as a scholar, as a grand scholar, I must reply. And he replied, that put the hate of the Imam into that judge's heart. That judge later on becomes one of the causes of the martyrdom of the Imam, and inshallah we'll get to that. So already we're looking at, there's a discrimination against his age. Because of his dark skin, and a lot of brothers here have a darker complexion, the Imam was, because of his descent, was North African, his mother was darker, he had a very dark complexion, not like Imam Rida alayhi salam. So they used to call Imam al-Aswad, the black one, in a bad way, in a derogatory way. Of course, when we say nowadays, we're such a multicultural society, we say, I have a black friend, I have a white friend, we might use these terms casually. We don't mean anything bad by it. In that time, with the racism that was prevalent amongst the Arabs. So other people were put off by the Imam on all these qualities. Now, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran? First things first, that children can be given authority. if they have the prerequisites of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ash-Shahid al-Thani rahmatullah alayh, the second martyr, one of our great scholars, Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr rahmatullah alayh, was giving lectures at the age of 8. As a sign unto the Shia, the age of 8, this great scholar who was martyred by Saddam and the forces of Saddam, they said he was so short, the minbar was too high, they would put crates so he could pop his head over the minbar and give lectures to adults. This is the age of 8. And these adults would listen, mawa'id, irshad. They take his advice and they take it home, where we change their lives with it. He was 8 years old. And this is not an imam. We have other scholars, they're mu'ammam at the age of 8. We have scholars that they start their hawza at the age of 5. So young people can have authority through knowledge. But what do we do with our youth? I ask, not even our youth, what do parents do to 25-year-olds, 28-year-olds, 18-year-olds? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajah.
Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he gave a governorship to a 15-year-old. The city of Medina was led by a 15-year-old at one point in time. He said when he left, he set out an expedition, a military expedition, and he said that very famous hadith, this is the army of Osama. Osama was a young man of 18. He says, whoever does not go with Osama is mal'oon. Allah has removed His mercy from them. And there are 2 figures in history that's associated with. So we find the Prophet was showing the people of the time, the ignorant ones of the time, young people need to be focused on. If we have this prejudice in our heart, what if the Imam comes and we're grey, and the Imam is shab, 33 in appearance? That's what our narration said. If we don't condition ourselves to accept authority of a person younger in appearance, because authority is through knowledge, if they have more knowledge, their appearance is irrelevant. So do you see how back then, we remember what happens back then, learn the lessons, there's an Imam coming. When the Imam comes, these lessons will be direct from an Imam. It won't be through a previous Imam. Age discrimination. We all have to work on it. I have a little cousin, and he's uncontrollable. And I want to sit him down, Habibi, we say in Arabic, sit like the children of the Prophet, You have to cross your legs and shake your mouth, basically. That's, to be direct. He doesn't sit still. He can't sit still. But you'll find that, ask him about the games he's playing. If he gets on and he wants to play Fortnite, for example, this guy could earn money. He's that good. And you get him interested, you realize there's a lot of intelligence behind this kid. He's actually very smart. He has a few things to fix up, but we all do. But if I actually sit down, kids are very aware. I have a little nephew as well. He's not even a year old. When I sit next to my nephew and a new person enters the room, he looks around, he looks at me, because he knows me, and he looks at the person, then he looks at me again. He will not accept the person who enters the room until I go up to that person and give them a hug, and I smile at my nephew, I say, Qasim, he's okay, mashallah, say salam to Ammu, and then he becomes comfortable. This is a baby. They have awareness. Islam taught us to try our best to give authority to the young. If we don't purify our hearts of this, wallah, it will challenge you in the Imam class. Wallah. Also, they refer to him as an Aswad. We know the 12th Imam is also of mixed descent. Now, subhanAllah, some people, as much as we like to think, we're not racist, some people think, Imam Rida alayhi salam is Iranian, and Imam Ali is an Arab, and everyone, whoever the maqam is, that's what he is. If Imam Rida alayhi salam was in Pakistan, he'd be Pakistani as well. Allah, what we will say, it's very simple, very simple. The Imams, especially the 12th Imam, is mixed. And subhanAllah, really brothers and sisters, take this into account. The Imam, first things first, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, his mother is who? Persian princess. Imam Zain al-Abidin is half Iranian and half Arab, or Persian to be more correct. Move down the line, you're going to find imams marrying maidservants, and we know in Islam we don't care about the status or the job of a person, it's about their taqwa, about their piety. They marry the most pious women. Allah chose their womb, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to carry imams, women, black women of African descent. And then the 12th Imam, they say that his grandmother, Sayyidah Narjah salamullahi alayha, was from the Romans, and in particular from Italy. One narration says she's Italian. So the Imam is mixed with Arabic blood, Persian blood, and Eastern Western blood. You see, European as well as in there. Do you see the wisdom in this? Every person can claim the Imam. SubhanAllah. He's there to lead mankind. Everyone can claim the Imam. But the Imam will come with a darker appearance. Now, you want to test yourself. If you're walking down the street at night, you see a person of darker complexion. Or maybe a white person sees a person of Arabic descent. Do they cross the street when they want to be awkward walking past? Do they feel a bit of fear in their heart? Maybe this person's a criminal. Everyone has prejudice. If you see an indigenous Australian, do you worry this person's going to mug you? If you see an Arab, do you think this person's also going to, try to offer you some drugs and do some drugs to you? These are things. It's funny, it's true. We laugh because we know that we have these prejudices. True or not? Okay, cool. What are we supposed to do? Understand when you look at your fellow human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, In akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most best of you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the most pious. And unfortunately, people in the time of the Imam, they looked at the Imam Rida alayhi salam, they doubted him, and they left the Imam and they went elsewhere. And these were people in the presence of Imam Rida alayhi salam. So we've gone through racial discrimination, age discrimination. What more is there? And inshallah with the salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, we know that al-Fadl was the daughter of al-Ma'mun, the caliph, the first caliph. So we had the Imam was the Imam for 23 years. 21 of those years was under the caliphate of al-Ma'mun. And al-Ma'mun had the quality of always trying to show his love for the Imam, want to be associated with the Imam. He wanted to show people, yes, that I'm associated with the Alawites or the followers of Ali alayhi salam. So he says to him as the boss, as the caliph, he says, the boss of his time, I want you to marry my daughter al-Fadl. And when the caliph offers his daughter, a refusal is a big thing. The Imam accepts. He doesn't have any children with his daughter, but he accepts. He becomes associated that my son-in-law is of Ahlul Bayt, alayhi salatu wassalam. And that was his move. Some people believe he had a sincere affection towards the Imam and later on he defected, but more scholars nowadays will say no, this was a political move. Either way, we know that at some point the Imam was martyred. When was he martyred? At the advice of that same judge, where the Imam gave mercy to a person who had been stealing so much and said no, the correct ruling, where to cut the hand, etc., under that leadership in Islamic law of that time and of other Islamic states, he would say to al-Ma'mun, or rather, afwan, please as-salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He goes to the Caliph al-Mu'tasim and he says to him, 1, 2, 3, this Imam is innocent, this court. He starts to talk to him because the Imam challenged the great judge of the time, and therefore it was shaking the authority of the state, because those judges their hands were in the pockets of whom? Al-Mu'tasim. He convinces Al-Mu'tasim eventually, you have to kill the Imam. So the Imam arranges, in some narrations they say that he was poisoned through a drink that was offered to him, through some juice. Others say that he was killed by poisoned grapes. But the more known one or more popular is that he was killed by his wife al-Fadl, and the Imam was poisoned. Okay, so there we have it. racial discrimination, age discrimination, hasad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, do you have envy for other people with what I have gave to them? When we see that brother cruises up and he's got a nice car, and mashallah, Allah gave him more hair than other brothers, you know, more maybe he's more attractive, he's got some sort of status, and we look at this guy and we're like, oh man, I wish I had what he had. But not only do I wish I had what he had, I hope Allah takes away what he has, and that's hasad. You see, that judge, he could have said, I wish I had the knowledge of the Imam. Ya Allah, grant me the knowledge of the Imam. But he said, no, I wish I had what he had, I'm jealous, and I want Allah to, or him to be gone, Allah to take it away, I need to have him dead. And this is how far it takes you. What are all these things attached to? Because there are more types of discrimination that they've done towards Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. What is this attached to? It's attached to love of this world. The Prophet says the source of all sin, haram acts, things that work against you, that buy you from Jannah, is hubb al-dunya. Hubb al-dunya does not mean that you can't enjoy yourself in the dunya. It means that it sits in a very special place in your heart. You know, I always bring the example of Prophet Solomon, of Nabi Sulaiman sallallahu alayhi, that he had a kingdom and he asked Allah for a kingdom, that Allah give me a kingdom that no one before me or after me will ever have. It does not matter what state we have today in the richness of these global states, no one had a kingdom like Nabi Sulaiman sallallahu alayhi. He had authority over jinns, over the wind, he spoke asfur, bird. He had authority in the seen world and the unseen world. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to take all of it away from him like that, nothing would enter the heart of Sulaiman. You know the dua, Allah, put the world in my hands and not in my heart. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wa amma man khafa maqama rabbih wa naha an-nafsa 'anil hawa fa inna al-jannata hiya al-ma'wa. Whoever fears to stand before Allah, man khafa maqama rabbih, have maqam in front of Allah. And stand there by yourself, removed from your grades, some of us naked. You're going to stand before in a very, very, very candid way before God. He's going to ask you questions. For some people, adab, some it's more itab. Itab as in, he won't punish you, but he's just going to mention things. That's what we have in some dua of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. He says, Allah, don't even, he goes, la ta'atibni, don't even mention what I've done. I don't want you to mention anything, just walk me in, walk me to Jannah, don't ask me. To that extent. He says, whoever has fear for that day. And khawf, Imam Ali alayhi salam says it beautifully. They say, khaf, you know, Allah takhafun Allah, khaf Allah, you know, we say in the Arabic communities, have fear of God. I'm not sure how you say it in Persian or how do you fear God? God said, Habibi, you're not supposed to fear Allah. You're supposed to fear your sins. Imam Ali says this, Allah is not to be feared himself. Allah is Rahman. Allah's mercy always comes before his anger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us so that we may worship him, so he may reward us. It's a win-win. But fear your sins, because you have to qualify for heaven. Qualifying for university means you to study. You need to sit examination. No one complains when they go to uni. Or, arguably. No one complains when they fail an exam. If they really ask themselves a question, did I fail because I studied 100% of the time? They'll say, no, I was lazy, I deserved this failure. Within themselves, they know the truth. Same way with heaven. You can't expect nothing for free. But what's great is that you have all the support. You have an open book exam. And you have an open book exam, and you've got people standing around you during this exam paper telling you the answers. All you have to do is say, Naam Sayyidi Mawla, and write it down. Bismillah, wassalam. So it's not as bad as you think. However, we fall victim to our passions. They say, if you fear your sins, and you fear standing before your nurturer, your Rabb, you know, not Lord. Rabb does not mean Lord. Lord is a very powerful name. Rabb is a very, very soft name. They say raising a child is for tarbiyat, correct? Nurturing. It's a soft thing, feeding, drinking, taking love and care. That's how you raise a child, not with force. The most sweetest parts of dua, we say, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi. We're asking Allah in a powerful way or in a soft way. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ. He's nurturer. And then he says, وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَلَى الْهَوَى. النَّفْسَ عَلَى الْهَوَى. And you stop your soul from inordinate desire. Just going with your desires, not thinking about controlling them. Very simple formula. فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى وَالسَّلَامُ. Heaven is your abode. So taking some very light examples from the Imam's life. Focus on not discriminating. Focus on looking at the knowledge of the person before you. Many people accepted Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam because they asked him questions. And they asked other people questions. And they were pleased with the answers of the Imam. Imam al-Zaman comes and we're going to say, oh my God, how do we know? How do we know he's an Imam? Habibi, if the Imam's on WhatsApp and he has a group, or if the Imam's on Facebook, I'm not sure what type of media he's going to use. Maybe he makes his own app. Maybe in technology it's possible. Some people say the sayha min as-sama, the call from the skies will be through the satellite systems. These are opinions of scholars, that they say that the Imam's call will come from every language all over the world. What does that sound like to you? When there's one news story, subhanAllah, how it's translated into every tongue, 160 tongues on most channels, right? Maybe the call of the Imam is through the television, you don't know what technology he may use. But either way, if we can work on looking at our fellow human beings, and you look at a brother or sister that looks different to you, or people outside of the religion who look different to you, Imam Ali says either they're your brother in your faith or your equal in humanity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to put this person here. What does it have to do with us? To discriminate and not want them there. They're going to do wrong, we have to be patient. Try to give advice. If the advice doesn't work, remove yourself from the situation. Either way, they have a right to live. They have a right to be there. We're not supposed to discriminate because of their culture, or their colour, or their age. We're supposed to look at every person and assess them individually. And maybe if we practice and condition the nafs, وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَلَى الْهَوَى, we don't let the nafs take over and rule our lives. فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us heaven through following the examples of Muhammad and al-Muhammad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the blessings of Imam al-Jawad sallallahu alayhi to purify our hearts from prejudice, to purify our hearts from discriminating against others purely because of their condition. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ensure that all of us stay alive and we are patient with one another. We also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the spiritual presence of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam, so that he may walk with us and that he may be like the guiding angels and be with us as a advisor. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless and forgive all the people who have attended and their families, the people who have died, and the people that are to come, that their births are blessed, inshallah. All the salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It said that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt are really killed by deception or poison. That they are killed by a sword or they are poisoned by the meal that they eat. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam was murdered by his wife Joy, to the extent where he said that he coughed up his liver, coagulated blood left his liver, and he went green in complexion. And as he choked and shivered, all he can say is, Ya akhi, ya Husayn. And Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, as he sits by the body of Abu Fadl al-Abbas, he wants to put his head into his lap, and Abu Fadl keeps looking his head. He says, why do you keep moving your head? He said, Ya Allah, Ya Akhi, my head is in your lap, who will put your head in there? Brothers and sisters, some say that the weapon of choice of the caliphs in the Arab world was arsenic, a flavourless and odourless poison. And there are other poisons that they use on the imams, where they would drink something innocently and they would know after a while that there'd be a violent eruption and inside the body would burn and they would vomit blood and pieces of their esophagus would start to tear from the acid of their stomach coming out of their mouth. I want you to think about Imam al-Jawad at the age of 25. Some of us here are older than 12. Imam al-Jawad, known for his piety, known for his beauty, he had nur on his face, he had the best of the akhlaq, he was guiding other people. No one saw except khayr from the Imam, and because of jealousy and prejudice and discrimination, the Imam was killed, the Imam was martyred. I want you all to reflect on your lives, the lives you're living. Remember Imam al-Jawad. When you get up from your seats tonight, say Ya Jawad al Muhammad, Nadi al Jawad, and say Ya Allah, make me with Imam. Ya Allah, the way they poison his body, let me not poison my body with my sins. Let me not poison my body with haram. Let me not poison myself, Ya Allah, and die in a dark day. Ya Allah, make my life martyrdom like the Imam. Inshallah. I ask Ali brother Farshad, inshallah, to start his azhar with a salat ala Muhammad wa ala
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum. صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Someone came to Imam Salih and he asked Imam Salih, how on Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam they like. So good question. How we know Imam Salih? How we know Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam? And then Imam Salih alayhi salam, he said, look at your heart, how much you like Ahlul Bayt. As much as you like them, they like you. And another narration is that Imam Salih said, someone said to Imam Salih, how honor Imam Hussein. And then he said, look at your heart during the Azhar and Nasa'ir of Imam Hussein. Look at your heart. If you feel sad for Imam Hussein, then that's a sign it's a sign for you to run. Look at your heart. سلامتی خودت و خانوادت و زمان صلوات sorry from now when I speak fast. Sorry I'm not you understand. بچه ما تو زمانی زندگی که خیلی مخالف از I'm saying a lot of people that have problems with azab. They're trying to avoid us to having azab. همه این علما همه هر چیزی که به ما رسیده از اهل بیت از ازاشون از این سنزنان این شهدایی که میبینید فاطمیان چه ایرانیان چه زینبیان اینایی که رفتن شهید شدن همه اینا به خدا قسم دل هیئت قرآن همشون بچه شد. یه ادعا آدم هستن میان مسجد نمازشون میخونن میرن بعد کار ندارن چه اتفاقی میفته. ولی اون کسی که شور دلش زیاده، دلش برای دلم میسوزه، اینا همشون از دل نگاه نکنید که مجلس خدا قسم والله قسم اینی که ما اینجا اومدیم با پای خودمون